Unless you've been hiding under a rock, you would have known and heard about the little debacle that's going on now with the Christian organization. I'm really reluctant to call it that. The organization calling themselves a Christian organization, Daystar. Now, what's happened was this: there was an allegation brought forward by the parents of a young girl. That these are son and daughter-in-law of the owners of Daystar, that someone was inappropriate with her at one of the family gatherings, and it was covered up by Joni Lamb, the owner, CEO of Daystar. Now, this has all gone into a spiral of networks and people and instigations and investigations, kind of not, and allegations and reasons. It is one convoluted story. So, we're going to try here on Too Strong to break this down in a more palpable manner. So, here's what we're going to talk about. Outside of the issues of Daystar and the hierarchies and who's in charge and who's not in charge and who's going to lead and who's not going to lead and who told the truth about this uh, marriage here and this divorce here and who should have married and who shouldn't have married and who's covering it. We're going to talk about the one person that everybody else seems to be forgetting, and that's the little girl. The little girl in all of this does not seem to get mentioned, and this is where the people who don't want to talk about it, this is what they'll say. Well, the parents brought this to the court, the judge, and he brought this to the police, and they reported it already, and the girl doesn't want to talk, and it's, oh, don't worry about it. This is what. Now, understand me. If you're a parent, you don't need a time frame or an amount or a limit on how many times you report something. You report until you get justice. In fact, there's something that's said about that in the good book, about the lady that was wanting justice from her adversaries, and she kept going to the judge, going to the judge, going to the judge, going to the judge. And he said, if you're going to be the death of me if you continue, I'm going to give you justice. You would think that maybe perhaps the father and the mother would be like this on behalf of their child. It has not been the case. They kind of fell away from because the child's been quiet and they don't have this evidence and this person's blocking that. It has not been at the forefront. I'm not saying they're not talking about it, but it is no longer the emphasis. They're talking about everything but the child at this point. What did my mom do? How did the mom handle this situation? What did the mom say about her marriage? What did the mom say about his leadership? How is it handling the entire entity of the corporation? And blah, 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 blah. Everyone is forgetting this little girl. Whether or not you believe something happened, it has not been looked into thoroughly enough. In fact, they were saying that, oh, this guy, the person that's involved in this by a name of Pete, family member, they said he took a polygraph and he passed the polygraph and no one has ever passed it any higher. You do understand that for you to pass a polygraph, it's still not admissible. That doesn't prove anything. You do realize that that's not saying that he didn't do anything. It's just saying that he was able to compose himself long enough to pass a polygraph. And for the grandmother, I should say, to be saying all the stuff she's saying, especially when she doesn't know what happened because she was never there, tells us a different story. Tells us that she's covering all the stories that she's told people. She speaks as though she is a fly on the wall or just outside the door or around when these events take place, but then would later to admit that she was never there. She was in the house, but she never was privy to these particular incidences. The only person that could have told her, since she already said that the kid ain't talking, would be Pete. She recently had a sit down with Marcus Rogers. Now, the interview has long since been deleted from YouTube, so you won't be able to find it. But the essence of it was a question and answering session about what happened and who did what and why did this allow to happen and all that stuff. The parents, on the other hand, have a lot to answer for, and this is why. I'm not saying that they are um, complicit, but I am saying that they're aloof to certain things. If you know that this individual, especially the first time, that there is an issue with that person in the family, do not bring your kids around that person anymore. We've made reference before too of this. There are environments, homes, places, people that have that one uncle that everybody knows likes to have kids sit on their lap, right? And every time you hear that uncle is going to be around, most of us with a thinking and functioning brain will be like, I ain't coming to that get together. Or if I do come to that get together, trust and believe my child will be around me 24/7, 365. That didn't happen in this occasion. I know there are tons of excuses that will come down the pike on behalf of the parents, but trust me, that doesn't float here because the responsibility still lies on the protection side, on the parents. Now, when you go to the grandparents, you would think they'd be doubly protective about their grandchild, but they're not. Joni was one who would say that the child would say something that happened in school, and she talked about her like she did not believe or at least the child had credibility issues. But when speaking on this Pete fellow, she was completely fine to say all the excuses she can come up with as to why it was okay for him to be in certain situations and in places with the young girl. One such incident, she said, no, not me, she said it, that the little girl walked in on Pete while he was getting out the shower. And she said this. Now, mind you, she was not there. All she said was, oh, she just opened the door and she closed it right back. How do you know that? Never says how she know. The only way she could know that is if Pete told her. And the only way that you would see that happening as it's just a simple thing would be if Pete embellished it to make it look like that. Even in her explanations, none of it seemed to be solid enough. She just kept going on tangents about the room, about this, about the other people, and you know when people tell a falsehood and they don't want you to make you believe that they are telling a falsehood, what they tend to do is overshare. They tell you way too much details that have nothing to do with the situation at all. That was her. Tons of all kinds of stuff. This, that, the size of the windowsill, what was outside the window, how much gleeful they were talking, and it's too much. We can tell now that it wasn't true. You're just talking to talk. But nobody is advocating for this girl. That's the crazy part of all of this, and it's unfortunate. Daystar has a lot to answer for. They do. They have a lot to answer for as an organization, first of all, but as a family for not letting this be known as a thing you're addressing properly, not internally, by law. The only person that's been traumatized is the young girl. I don't care what people think about Pete. I don't care what people say to parents. The person that was traumatized is the little person, but no one's thinking or listening or talking about. She shut down for whatever reason. Some speculated that the grandmother might have threatened her. If you talk, your father has this to deal with, and if you talk, this is what will happen. We don't know. But the little girl stopped talking. That alone is direct information to you that something did happen. To what extent? You have to investigate. And as a parent, you got to push to make it happen. You can't be sitting by and then get distracted with what your mother did when before your father died and when she got married. If she got remarried, was it sinful? Was it biblical? You're going down a tangent that ain't got nothing to do with you. The emphasis, the point, the topic, the centerpiece of this should be little girl. And that's been lost. And that's a very unfortunate thing. Because it's a Christian organization, don't forget what it says about the little people. If you bring harm to them, it's better the millstone be hung around your neck. This is very serious. This has become a soap opera of sorts. And while it might be entertaining to a lot of people, and to the atheists, they might be thinking, yeah, this is how it should be. And to the people that hate everybody else, they're like, yeah, this is perfect. But nobody's talking, at least not a whole lot, about making sure that there is justice brought forward for this little girl. Time will tell what will happen. If it gets fizzled out and eventually the child becomes so distraught that she doesn't know what to do with herself, who's going to be blaming themselves then? This is a harsh reality, by the way. Don't think I'm wishing anything on anybody. This is a harsh reality. This kind of trauma can be so detrimental to somebody young who doesn't know how to navigate the fields of their minds and their heart. And when you look out as a young person, not seeing the defense of your issue the way it should be, especially by those espousing to be your loved ones, that could hurt even worse. This little girl is going through quite an ordeal, and none of the adults are acting adults. They're acting younger than her, looking out for self. What about my reputation? What about Daystar? You know, at one point in the interview, when asked about what I would change, this is what she said, what she would change. I just changed what I say, but it also proved I was happy it happened. This is what she said. I was happy this incident happened because it proved to me that my son is not ready to lead Daystar. I will let you make sure that sits in your mind and marinades before you make any other decision about what these people are guilty of or not guilty of. At minimum, negligence. at the most participation. In either case, we here at Too Strong hope that justice will prevail and it will be served.